Hello, I'm Paul.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Ben.
And welcome to the Film Busters podcast. The film show with no filters, no prisoners taken, loads of disagreements, but one hell of a love for cinema.
If you want to hear three friends ridiculing each other for an hour or so regarding their taste in films, then you have come to the right place.
In each episode, one of the team picks a film for us to discuss. It could be anything from a recent cinema release to an all-time classic.
So, strap in and get ready to get mad or get vindicated as we guide you through the murky world of being a film geek.
If you like what you hear, you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram using @FilmbustersPod. You can also find each of our individual accounts. I'm at Filmbusters Paul.
I'm at Filmbusters Adam.
And I'm at Filmbusters Ben.
If you want to use your eyes instead of your ears, you can also visit the website at filmbusterspod.co.uk.
And if busting makes you feel good, you can also support us at patreon.com/filmbusters for exclusive content.
Or shoot over and get some groovy merchandise at society6.com/filmbusters.
Alright, can we just get on with this now, please?
Filmbusters.
Hello everyone, we're back again for another episode, and it's a very, very special episode. We have two surprises today.
Yes,
Not
we
just
do.
one, but a very special surprise that Julio doesn't even know about yet.
This is true.
Well, you're just giving away one surprise without even really introducing the person.
Yes. So
you just
surprise
dropped his
everyone
name
else.
without saying...
Tried to figure out if I should be silent or not.
The first surprise is that Julio from the Contrarians is here. How are you doing, Julio?
I'm doing great. I think this is the earliest I've ever recorded a podcast.
Wow.
I'm on England time.
What time is it for you now? 9:47 a.m.?
8:47. It's really not that bad.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, we've done, I think we did an early record. The earliest we did was that time when we for your reference, because of the hour difference, right? When we did District 9, it was 8 o'clock start, wasn't it?
Something like that,
very
ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, you have our sympathies. Early morning records have not been our forte in the past. We normally sound very groggy.
Julio does have a very big cup of Starbucks, though, so hopefully that will...
That's
Get
true.
you through.
It's
It'll
silly.
get you through. What is your Starbucks? What is in that cup?
It's not even coffee. It's oh god, what do they call it? A lemonade tea? It's a peach and green tea lemonade tea.
Oh,
So
very
quite
nice.
It's refreshing, but
Yes.
not as sugary and bad, I guess, as most of the Starbucks stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody at Starbucks is listening to this. It's like, no, it's just as bad, guy. You just don't realize it.
Yeah.
But
No one at Starbucks listens to us.
They got on playing in the shops.
Yeah.
yeah, no, the cats and dog wake me up at 7 a.m. to feed them, so I was up already.
Oh, yes. Those damn animals.
We love them, though.
We love them, though.
We love
yes.
the
It had to be
animals.
followed with that.
I'm sure that this isn't the case for most of our regulars anyway. Everyone will know who Julio is. But for those who don't know who you are, Julio, why don't you give us a elevator pitch for The Contrarians, your podcast?
The elevator pitch for the Contrarians. We are a movie podcast, much like yours, but the first half of our show is not to be taken seriously. We pick a movie from Rotten Tomatoes that's either really high or really low on their score, and we argue against that score. So if it's a fresh movie like Citizen Kane, we'll talk about how Citizen Kane is overrated, and we'll point out all the bad things in it. If it's a rotten movie, like we just finished doing Jason Takes Manhattan, we'll talk about how awesome Jason Takes Manhattan is, and how great it is that I finally took him out of Crystal Lake, and all the other good things that movie does. And then in the second half of the show, Real Talk, we'll tell you how we really feel. And sometimes it matches the first half of the show, sometimes it doesn't, but that's part of the fun. Like in Jason Takes Manhattan, where I waited until the very end to tell Alex how I really felt about the movie.
Did you break his heart?
I'm not telling you. You're going to have to
No,
wait.
you can't, can you? Well, I can't wait to hear that episode personally. That will be a treat. We're huge fans of yours over here. Obviously, this is the first time that you're appearing solo. We had you guys as a collective on with us in September last year. We did Holy Motors. For anyone who has not seen that film, I don't know if I would even recommend listening to that episode if you haven't seen the film.
No, I would not.
I don't know.
Watch the film first.
Does it make more sense if you watch the film first? Maybe
I don't think it
does.
makes sense either way.
It's probably not. But it's a great conversation.
It is a
Great film as well.
Yeah.
You'll have the images at least to guide you through the conversation. You'll understand
Yes.
what is it that drove Ben to want a cigarette. Like what exactly was going on the screen when that happened.
Indeed.
Absolutely. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Holy Motors today, Paul, are we?
No, we're here to talk about a film that Julio, as a Patreon, has decided we should talk about today, and that is Charlie Chaplin's Limelight from 1952. I'm very excited to talk about it with you boys.
Same.
I'm very excited. This was a first-time watch for all of us, right?
I
Yes.
believe so, yeah.
That's
Julio
correct.
did give us a great selection of films. One of them was 7 hours long, wasn't it, Julio?
What's that movie about the Holocaust survivors that it's like 9 hours long?
Wow.
Good Lord. Can you imagine if we covered that?
That'll be my next pick. It'll be
That'll be a deep
Yeah.
episode.
Filmbusters 3-parter.
This was the shortest of all your picks at 2 hours 20.
And I didn't notice. I honestly, what I did was I looked at my criterions and I'm like, okay, what haven't I watched that would be interesting to cover? And I didn't even realize that everything I was grabbing was like over 2 hours long.
There's a reason why you haven't watched it yet. That's because you need a whole day.
Oh, there's some that I didn't even pick because I knew they were long already. Like there's another Chaplin movie, Mr. Verdun, I think that's what it's called. The one that he did before Limelight.
Before
That's
this.
also really long. And I already knew that one was long, so I just left it there. It's all right. We made it through. We survived.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Julio likes suggesting these plus 2 hour films for us because they can't do it over at Contrarians because it breaks the Mattis rule. The Mattis rule being, was it 90 minutes or 2 hours?
It's 90 minutes.
90
minutes, yeah.
After 90 minutes, you have to really earn it. Anything
Yeah.
90 minutes or less, you'll forgive anything.
Yeah, this is true.
Should we reveal to Julio why this is such a special
Why
episode?
keep it a secret much longer?
And also to the listeners as well.
Yes, and to the listeners, but Julio's the one who matters right now because he's been brought onto an episode that is actually not only special because he's on it, but special because this is actually our 100th episode.
What? That is awesome. Man, I don't know if knowing that would have changed my selection. Maybe I would have picked something more festive.
Not at all.
Something
More
with
festive.
100 in the title.
Yes.
We had that conversation internally, didn't we? Like, what
Yeah.
film could we watch for our 100th? There's no good films with 100 in their title, really. I
I
mean,
don't think
well,
so.
I say that having never seen one with 100 in the title. There might
I can't think of one. No, maybe you should have just revisited your first ever, which I can't even. I listened to your first 10 episodes very recently, and I can't think of what your first ever one was.
It was.
Our
Star
first
Wars,
episode
wasn't it?
is actually very convenient because it's actually something we're going to talk about later, and it is actually Last Jedi, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Was it that your first one? Wow.
Yes. We will come full circle on this episode. No one knows why yet.
Yeah. To anyone who is new to us, I would suggest you don't do what Julio did and listen to our first 10 episodes because they are rugged. They are not the best content.
Should we go back and
found our way.
re-record it? This
Remaster
is a
it.
Patreon where we re-record them.
We could have done that for 100th. You're right. We could have just revisited the first film and come at it with fresh takes. But instead, we wanted beloved patron Julio on
That
the show.
is
What better way
a
to
better
celebrate
choice.
100?
I agree.
Yes.
This is awesome. Okay, then with that in mind, with the knowing that it's a 100th episode, then I think that it makes sense to fire 4 questions at you instead of 2.
Yes.
That you just
Okay.
given me the extra reason.
Yes.
Or you can give us 100 questions.
Or our-
Buckle up.
Yes, we might as well go straight on to the staple of every episode, which is the quiz, where usually I ask Adam and Ben a couple of questions, and it's about the film we're doing. If they get them right, they get the points. If they get them wrong, I get the points. But today, as a special guest, Julio is the host of the quiz.
Does Julio get points if we get it wrong?
Yes, what happens if we get it wrong? Just no points to nobody.
Just no points.
No, Julio gets some points, and on the
Julio
end of the
gets
year,
some
he can be on
points,
our
okay.
leaderboard.
Maybe if you guys miss all 4 questions, I get to give Avengers Endgame an extra point on your rankings.
Oh, shit. You boys better work hard. I'm telling you. Dig deep.
Let's hope that Paul pulls out his finger, like he did with the movie Journey.
This
Listen, we all failed on that movie journey. Don't get it twisted. All right, I'm game for that. Okay, we get the questions. We got to get all these questions right.
So 4 questions. Shall we go
Okay.
straight into it, Julio?
All right. Cool. So I have a nice mix of, like I told you guys before we start recording, in movie trivia and out of movie trivia. So we'll start with question number 1. What are the names of Calvero's fleas?
Phyllis and Henry.
Yes.
Whoa!
Adam Henry.
Adam, how have you done that?
I knew Phyllis. I wasn't too sure on Henry. I was like,
You
it's so-
spat it
no big of
out
a
very
H.
quickly for
Wow.
someone who wasn't sure.
That
I
was
just had to
good.
go. I had to just go with your initial thought. It rolls to the tongue together.
I
Well
totally
done.
forgotten.
Paul, did you do a recap of the scores before
I
this?
didn't. I just thought of that.
Go
So
on, recap
just
now.
to let everyone know, the scores are, as it stands, 15 for Ben, was 19, now 20 for Adam, and 10 for me.
Julio can overtake you by the end of this episode, Paul.
All right.
Well played.
Question number 2. This movie features the acting debut of Geraldine Chaplin. Who does she play?
The child on the steps as he goes into the building right at the beginning.
That's right. Ben
Is
got
that
it.
when you've done some movie trivia study there, Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was all 3 were his children, weren't they? Or was it 3 or 4?
Some of them. I don't know if it was all of them.
But the oldest girl is his daughter for sure, Geraldine. All right, so point for Ben.
Lovely.
Number 3. Chaplin felt sorry for a fellow silent actor and cast him in a small role in Limelight.
Buster Keaton.
I was just about to shout it and interrupt him, but
Yeah.
I felt bad.
I feel bad about interrupting.
You've done it before. I've heard you guys just step over each other. And doing
Yeah,
the
but
essay.
you're a guest here. We've got to be nice. He has no etiquette.
I'm also very excited about just Adam and Ben rivaling for this top spot by the end of the year, so I don't actually mind that they get the points.
No, you should mind a little bit.
Adam minds because now I'm coming
There's a point where it gets embarrassing.
Dear Buster Keaton.
Indeed.
All right, number 4. Complete the lyric. I'm an animal trainer.
Oh.
No idea.
It'll be something like, to follow the lyrical flow of how that song goes, I'm an animal trainer, a trainer of something. That's the best I can do. He will repeat a trainer of, that's what I think. That's the best I can do.
I kind of remember this happening in the film.
It's when he's singing. It's when he's singing
Yes.
before he talks about why he has the fleas.
The flea circus.
Yeah, but like, I don't remember.
He's cracking the whip and singing about how he used to do elephants. Now he does fleas.
I'm an animal trainer. Animal trainer.
Am
I am. Am I?
Oh, guys, so close to a perfect score. No, it's I'm an animal trainer, a circus entertainer.
Oh,
yes.
okay, of
Yes,
course.
yes.
Of course.
All right,
Wonderful.
well, Avengers Endgame stays in its current spot, so at least you accomplished that. Ben got
We
2
stopped
points.
that.
Adam got 1 point. And Paul just chills in the back.
I'm chilling.
I'm happy I got one of Julio's questions because, yeah.
Ben's
That's an honour.
creeping. He's creeping towards you.
Creeping up. So what are the scores now, Paul?
So the scores at the end of that round. Ben, you're on 17. Adam, you're on 20, and I'm on 10.
Well, all I will say is this quiz is getting interesting because you were running away with it, and now we're getting tight.
Well, you think I was like 6 points clear? It's now down to 3.
3 points. Anything could happen, Adam, by the end of the year, though.
Exactly. Paul could win.
We're not even halfway through the year.
Yeah, you never know.
No, we're not.
I might do some really hard questions, and Adam
me
will
and
complain for the rest
Ben
of the
will
year.
just get them wrong on purpose until you're back in it.
Yeah.
I should hope so.
We'll just throw the quiz.
Right, that was a wonderful quiz. Just before we go on to the main event, let's just talk about our wonderful Patreon channel, who Julio is a part of, and that's why we're here today, because he gets these wonderful benefits, like suggesting the films, and then coming on the show and having a wonderful chat with the film busters.
Well, we hope it's going to be wonderful. It might be quite terrible.
It
Might
could
be
be
a very
quite
bad
terrible.
episode. We got our fingers crossed for this one.
He might even cancel his subscription by the end of this.
Yes. And I wouldn't blame him. But no, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to promote it. No one's cancelling anything. Everyone's joining up in abundance, right?
But where can they join?
We're going to join Paul.
Yes, you can join us at www.patreon.com/filmbusters. Well, I think we've got 18 episodes up at the moment, and we've got like over 11 hours of content on there. So you've got a lot to go through if you sign up.
Very lovely.
I can attest
Beautiful.
to that.
There we go. You heard it from the horse's mouth. Julio wouldn't lie to you.
How dare you call our little person on this podcast a horse?
Well,
I just called this little person.
yeah,
like
the little
to me.
person.
I couldn't find the right words, and I called him a little person.
He's standing up. He's bigger than all of us, Paul. Anyway, all of that is reasons to sign up to be patron, okay?
Yes, to be demeaned by the host.
Yes. All right.
Lovely. Shall we move on to the main event?
Let's move on to the main event.
Now what's the matter?
I'll never dance again. I'm a cripple.
Pure hysteria. You've made yourself believe that.
It isn't true.
It is, otherwise you'd fight.
What is there to fight for?
Ah, you see. You admit it. What is there to fight for? Everything. Life itself, isn't that enough? To be lived, suffered, enjoyed. What is there to fight for? Life is a beautiful, magnificent thing. Even to a jellyfish. What is there to fight for? Besides, you have your art, your dancing.
Can't dance without legs.
I know a man without arms who can play a scherzo on a violin and does it all with his toes. The trouble is you won't fight. You've given in, continually dwelling on sickness and death. But there's something just as inevitable as death, and that's life. Life, life, life. Think of the power that's in the universe, moving the earth, growing the trees, and that's the same power within you, if you'll only have courage and the will to use it.
Right, everyone, today we are talking about Limelight, the 1952 film from Charlie Chaplin. This is a spoiler episode. We'll go straight into spoilers, no hanging around. So if you haven't seen it, we'll spoil it for you unless you just want to get spoiled. Whatever you want to do, we don't mind. But first of all, Adam, you have to do a really, really bad, maybe good plot description.
Oh God, I still always forget until about this.
100 episodes in, he's still surprised when it gets to this point.
Until I start recording it, and I'm like, halfway through, I'm like, shit, I need to do this. So this film has got Charlie Chaplin in it.
Oh wow.
Yep, as we said, he directs it. A bit of an auteur with it.
An auteur.
Is that how you say that word?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
it is. You caught me off guard using that word, sir.
I'm going to stop now, that's it. No.
Yeah, go
Anyway,
out. I
so
know.
this is about, he works, he's an entertainer. He's a circus entertainer and is an animal trainer.
I like what you did there.
No, he's working at the theatre and he's doing his bits over there. And then you've also got this girl who can't walk, who used to be a ballerina, and she's trying to rediscover her life. And she's also got her friend, and they're all trying to make it, and they're all trying to just stick around, and they're all trying to hold on to the dreams that they have and where they once were. Everything's starting to fade away, and they're still trying to get back to the big time.
Well, in a very esoteric way, he hit the nail on the head, I suppose.
I got there in the end.
Yes.
He's got a friend who can't walk. There you go.
Yeah.
A friend who can't walk. Well, that was very good. I will just recite some facts off for you people. One interesting bit of trivia that's relevant to the Film Busters pod is this the earliest film that we've ever covered. Prior to this, I think it was Persona. I think that was the earliest film we'd done. So this is our first venture into the 50s. So, as Adam said, Charlie Chaplin wrote the screenplay, he directed, he starred, and he composed the score for this. Claire Bloom is the name of the actress who plays Terry, the ballet dancer, and Buster Keaton does indeed make a cameo appearance in this. And when I saw his name in the opening credits, I nearly shit a brick because I was so ecstatic. I had no idea that he was going to be in it. I was like, Buster Keaton with Chaplin? Anyway, in 1952, when Chaplin came to London to premiere this film, he had no idea that it was going to be the last time that he'd be in America for another couple of decades, because he was actually ostracized from the country because they believed he was a communist on the back of Monsieur Verdot, however you pronounce it, his previous film, which was slightly more political than this one. So by him coming to London for the premiere of this was him returning to his homeland, which he had left, I think, when he was like 13 or 14. He was born in London, so the film is set during the time when he was a child in 1914. So everything, his vision of London in the film is the vision of London that he had in his head of when he was a child, when he grew up with his mother, and the life that he had left behind. Chaplin originally wrote, I don't know if this is true or not, this seems a bit crazy, but maybe, he wrote a 100,000 word novel first, of this story before committing it to screenplay. Julio's nodding, so it must be true. This was his last American film. He had his own studio, own crew, and total control of the film, much like Buster Keaton had before him, until MGM seized control of all his productions. And like Julio hinted to in the quiz earlier, Buster Keaton does make a cameo appearance in it. Chaplin gave it to him out of charity because Keaton had fallen on very, very hard times. And I've got one bit of trivia and one question for all of you, because I think this is quite interesting. Because he was sort of outed as a communist, the film wasn't allowed to play in America for another couple of decades. So it didn't screen in LA, I think, until 72 or 73 it was. So it actually wasn't eligible for the Oscars until 1973. So Chaplin and a couple of others won the Oscar for best score in 1973, over 20 years after the film came out. So bearing in mind that that's when this film won an Oscar, what film do you think won the Oscar for best film in 1973 when Limelight was eventually eligible?
That's
Godfather
interesting.
Part 2?
No.
Shoot me down like that. It's around that era, isn't it? The
This is-
1973.
early 70s would have been
Yeah.
The Conversation.
Well,
I was going to say that.
you're very, very close with it. What if I told you the person who won Best Actor was Brando?
Oh, what's the
The first Godfather?
first
The
Godfather?
first Godfather.
Oh, right.
So that's what Charlie was up against.
Wow.
Well, there we go. Anyway, and then we'll get into our personal thoughts.
Yes, and as a special guest on Filmbusters, Julio, you get to decide in what order you want us to say our first initial thoughts on the film.
All right, I gave this some thought before I came on. Okay, we'll go Adam, Paul, Ben.
And where are you going?
I go at the end.
Okay.
I don't want my thoughts to influence anything.
Okay.
Right.
So, I've only ever seen 2 Chaplin films before this, and that's The Great Dictator and I think it's City Lights.
Yeah.
And I very much enjoyed both of them, especially City Lights. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was brilliant. This one, however, is quite different to the other 2. It's kind of not his typical... He mixes it in with a real bit of drama and a bit of that. And for me, I enjoyed the Chaplin being Chaplin part a lot more than I enjoyed the drama bits. They were still good, but every time we were watching those bits, I was like, get back to seeing him perform. I want to see him being the charismatic person that you kind of go to see a Chaplin film for. And it was... I guess the only way I could describe it is maybe Ben when he watches Inglourious Basterds. It's like when Christoph Waltz is on screen. He's so... Those parts are really good that when he's not there, it's still good, but all you're longing for is them to come back onto screen. And in his own way, it's only a victim of its own success in this way of this film. And I find it very difficult to score it, but I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 overall.
Wow,
Because
I wasn't expecting you to go that high
about it.
after what you said.
The
You
more
were
I think
damning
about
it.
the more I enjoyed it, and it's still so good. And it's the ending of this film that really, it kind of won me. It was a 7, and then the ending I was like, oh no, that's a lovely.
No, you
way
were a
to
sucker
finish
for
it.
that ending, were you?
I was a sucker for the ending, and I very much enjoyed Chaplin doing his thing. It's still great if he can still entertain people 70 years on, and whatever when he started, it's wonderful. He's a master of the physical comedy.
Wow.
Well.
High praise, even if you weren't expecting it, folks.
I was not expecting that.
No.
I didn't want to see the drama. 8 out of 10.
I know, I didn't want the drama. Make
No,
him a clown.
I'm not saying I didn't want to see it. It wasn't as good. They weren't as engaging as the bits when Charles
It's very
Chaplin
interesting you
was on.
say this. This is going to provoke
it's
some
still
good
good.
conversation afterwards, because there's a total flip side to what you're saying.
Well,
I'm biting my tongue.
Okay.
I just want to hear
Yes. Go on, Paul.
okay.
Maybe you should have gone first. Yeah.
This was the first time I'd ever heard of Limelight, let alone seen it. So it was very, very fresh for me. I've also watched a couple of Chaplin films, but I've watched The Kid and Gold Rush, which again is very different tonally. So yeah, I didn't expect it. But for starters, it was incredibly jarring to hear Chaplin's voice, right? And he almost had like Patrick Stewart vibes. Like when I heard him, I was like, "Oh, Patrick Stewart," and yeah, I was very much surprised by that. But going to the first act of this film, you instantly get a feel of where we're going with it. It's like two artists in some way like stunted with their place in the world, and whether that be like the daunting climb up the mountain of fame or the descent from its peak kind of thing. I must say I wasn't too blown away by it in its first act and kind of its second act either. I was certainly enjoying it, but I felt like it never really lingered on the important moments too much. You'll go from like dramatic scenes, like when she lost the use of her legs, or when he was given the chance to be a part of the show, and he was like reluctant to do so. And then suddenly it was just like, oh, she can walk again, and now he's got a part. He actually wants to do the show now. I was like, okay, so don't give me the actual drama that I want to see. I also felt, in some ways, the sketches. I know Adam loved these sketches, but I felt they went on a little too long in places, especially the flea circus one at the beginning. I felt like it went on for ages, and I was like, okay, how many times do you want me to see this flea jumping from one hand to the other? I've seen it enough now. It almost felt like this was actually in part like a show reel for Chaplin to kind of be like, look, I can still do it, guys, because it kept showing like these really long sections of like comedy, like sketches or like drama, and but then something changed, and it almost felt like all my original feelings, almost like a preconception of what the world thought of Calvero, and now spending time with him, understanding him, and finally seeing the incredibly funny piano routine at the end, I was drawn in by it. What was missing from his life was the laughter of this crowd, and now even overlaying that with like the brief flea circus scene, overlaying that laughter, I enjoyed that scene more because I was like, this is what was missing. This is why that wasn't that good at the beginning. I thought it was a lovely film. It misses in some places, but I give it an 8 out of 10 as well.
There's very solid score as well.
Wow.
With some of your criticisms up front, I thought you were gonna
I wanted
go.
to get them out there. I wanted to get them out there.
all round.
Kept
Okay.
waiting for Paul to say that it wasn't gory enough.
I came for blood. I wanted those fleas to die.
I needed some brutality. Yeah. All right. So I'm a big fan of Chaplin as well. I started watching his stuff early 21st century when I went to uni, but it wasn't on the course. It was kind of like, because I was looking into the history of cinema and the birth of cinema, I was like, let me check some of these Chaplins out. So the very first Chaplin film I ever saw was Modern Times, and it is brilliant, beautiful. Paul and Adam, you didn't mention it. If you haven't seen it,
No, sorry, I meant. Did I mention Modern
you said
Times?
City Lights, and I don't
No,
think
I'm
you
sorry,
said
I meant
Modern
Modern Times. The one I watched.
That's for me
when
is his
he's
greatest
when he's
work.
working in the
Yeah, in the
line.
factory.
Yeah.
So
That's
this
what I meant,
is
sorry.
his
It's brilliant.
that is his masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. So every other Chaplin film that I've seen subsequently gets scored against that. So nothing can ever compete. There's some really great ones. I've seen The Kid, I've seen City Lights, and I've seen The Gold Rush, and A Great Dictator. But I knew going into this, obviously, that, okay, this is going to be addressing Chaplin, coming to terms with the fact that cinema has now moved on. We're not in the silent era anymore. We are not just looking at for physical performances, physical comedy. People have got to speak. People have got to sing. We've got to hear things. We've got to tell stories in a different way. So I was really looking forward to how Chaplin was going to play that. I was looking forward to a drama. And I was surprised how much comedy there still was in the film. Not in a bad way, but I was expecting more of to refer to something that you've covered recently on your podcast, Julio, a sort of Mickey Rourke wrestler type look at Chaplin and his career, because it's like, oh, I'm all washed up now. But it wasn't that. It was much more optimistic than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be very like shoegazing, down in the dumps, my time is over. But what I liked the most about this film was that he was making this at a time when absolutely his best years were behind him. He was coming off commercial failures. People, I don't know, but I'm assuming what he says in the film is right. People weren't talking about Chaplin anymore. He wasn't the star, Paul. Coming to terms with that, even though he's probably exercised some demons through the making of the film, he channeled it into a very optimistic message. There was so much dialogue throughout it that was about progress is a good thing. You've got to move forwards. Think about life. Think about joy. Be optimistic. Move on with things. Don't feel sorry for yourself. It was a very powerful, positive message. And everyone brings their own personal thing to a film. Everyone views a film based on their own life experiences and stuff like that. But it really, really reminds me of my granddad and how no matter what was going on, he would always be optimistic about things. And I always connect my granddad to Charlie Chaplin anyway, because he would sing loads of his songs and stuff like that. So it kind of felt like, oh my God, it's like my granddad's energy is in this film. That being said, it was very, very self-indulgent for Chaplin. I would have loved for this film to have existed outside of it being about him. It felt very much about him as Calvero as Chaplin, about stardom, about having an audience, about being relevant. And it didn't really feel like it had as much resonance outside of the stage, the theatre and cinema. I would have liked it to have been a more universal tale. That said, it was all very optimistic. I laughed when I needed to laugh. I felt tugs on my heartstrings when I saw glimmers of old Chaplin. And I think the times when he was playing Calvero, he was I don't know, explicitly making him like vulnerable, old, aged, not quite as funny as he should be. That's why, Paul, like you said, when you're watching some of those scenes, it's like, this is uncomfortable. Is this funny? Like, I was asking myself, is this meant to be funny, or are we meant to be observing him thinking he's funny? And I don't know. I think the line blurs. And I liked that. I wasn't won over by the ending, though, Adam, unlike you. The ending I really didn't like. I knew his death was inevitable, but I didn't want it to be like that. But all being said, there's a lot to enjoy in it, and it's an 8 out of 10 from me as well, boys.
There we go.
What the hell?
Oh, so no. Julio's going to come in with a 3 here.
Well, now I'm going to look like the bad guy. I hated this movie. No, I didn't.
But it would have surprised me.
It's funny. I agree. I agree and disagree with a lot of things that you've all said. It's funny how, we all experience a movie differently. I guess to set the tone, I am also a big Chaplin fan. Have seen, I think, most of the big ones. I haven't seen Monsieur Verdieu. That's the only one the big ones I think that I haven't. I've seen several of the shorts and, The Kid, Modern Times. I'm also a Modern Times person. Like, to me, that's his best out of all the ones that I've seen. And I think that that, at least in my case, affected how I watched the movie, because having the connection to him as a performer, and especially his character, like the character of the tramp, really brings like an extra emotionality, I think, when you're watching Calvero, because you can't help but project it. And it was like, wow, we've seen him grow old, and now this is a story of him as an old performer. So that really, I think that's what grabbed me from the beginning, seeing an older Chaplin performing his routines from when he was younger. That was very poignant. But I had a really hard time connecting to the dramatic scenes, the melodramatic scenes. I think that they're just so heightened. And when I was watching the movie, I was trying to factor in the fact that this is an older movie, and so it's an older style of acting, and it's an older way of telling a story. But I just felt, especially because it goes, it's like 2:20, I think, 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I felt that there was a lot of, when it hit the big moments, the big dramatic moments, there was a lot of repetition. And I was just like, I get it. He like every time he would give like one of those inspirational speeches, or every time that there was like a big moment where they were just wallowing in sorrow, it would just go on. And, like the first third of the movie, I think, before she regains the use of her legs, is like every time we're with her with the dancer, she's just lamenting about how miserable life is, and then he is like lifting her up, and I was like, that's great for like one scene, but it just kept happening. And so I struggled with that part. I think that I'm on the camp of the physical comedy worked for me. I found him funny. Give me 90 minutes of the flea routine, That was just, I was laughing out loud. It was just, sometimes it just, when it works, it works. He just kept like moving his eyes and doing the whole thing. It was great. Every time he dances, I could only hope to be that nimble when I get to be like 60, 70, however old he was. That was great. And I like the ending. I more than anything because of the commitment. I was afraid that we were heading towards some sort of happy ending, and that's not what this story was. Like, it could have, when about halfway through the movie, she tells him that she loves him, and I had really enjoyed the relationship with this sort of platonic friendship. And when they took it in that direction, I was like, oh no, is this going to turn out into a love story? But then it morphed into this sort of love triangle. And I'm like, okay, this is great as long as you don't give me a happy ending, because this love triangle involving these specific people can't have a happy ending. And then, of course, what happens is he dies. And so I was happy that he committed to that instead of trying to make it a lighter affair. But man, it dragged for me. There were as much as I loved moments of it, they were because of the redundancies and just the I guess the old time acting and the old time storytelling. I was struggling through, especially like the middle section, I think. And I'm not gonna lie, like whenever I heard about Limelight and whenever I thought about Limelight, it was always sold to me as that movie where Buster Keaton and Charles Chaplin finally worked together. And I was kind of let down by that sequence. It was Keaton is basically in the background. Yeah, I think Chaplin is great. His whole bit where his legs keep shortening, I think that's great. But
Yeah, nice.
All that Keaton does really is just mess with the piano, and he steps on the violin at some point.
Shuffle the papers.
Yeah. It really is. It's a glorified cameo, and I was really hoping for more out of this crossover of sorts, right? So I mean, it's unfair for me, I guess, to put my expectations of that on the movie, but I can't be helped. I think maybe on a rewatch, I would know more. I would know better what to expect, and maybe be more positive. But overall, I am going to give it an extremely low, given your 8s, 5 out of 10.
Whoa! 5, yes. Okay.
It didn't seem so low before I heard your scores.
The ironic thing is, Julio, you actually said like some things that would make yours sound higher than what Adam gave it.
I feel like me and Julio kind of got the same out of this film. I feel like what I was trying to say.
Reviews, you got the wrong scores.
Yeah, I feel like what I was trying to say, Julio said in a much better way, which always happens on here. I always say my review, and someone says what I want to say, but in a much more articulate way.
No, we love your raw takes, Adam. We love them.
I was not expecting a 5 though, Julio. I was thinking, okay, it's going to go from an 8. Okay, maybe now 7. But I was not expecting anything below that.
Well, it's a little bit what you said. You said that this movie was a victim of its own success, and I think, to me, it's a victim of Chaplin's success, because this is the first time I felt that a Chaplin movie wasn't 100% timeless. Any other Chaplin movie I've seen, I'm like, this works. I can show this to anybody, and they're going to get it. They're going to laugh. They're going to, even if it's not up their alley, they're going to at least understand why I like it. With this one, I think that I would have to explain a lot more of the context. I wouldn't show this to anyone as their first Chaplin movie. I think that I would give them a few of them just so they can get a feel for it, and I guess come into that sort of nostalgic feeling that I did when I first watched it.
Definitely, yeah. I think I'd definitely help coming in with a prior knowledge of some Chaplin
That's why
films.
I think the bits, the skits, they work so well in this film, because they are timeless. Like I was saying, 70 years later, you're still laughing at something so simple but yet so effective. He's just walking around, like you said, walking around stage with a shortened leg. It's just so well done.
But I think that, great that you find them funny, Adam and Julio, and I think that he probably did play it for laughs. I don't think he did do it intentionally so that people go, oh, this guy's not funny. But I think, I don't know, maybe the reason, Paul, you and I didn't find it so funny is because we're looking at it from that lens of, okay, are we meant to be perceiving Calvero as this tragic figure whose best is behind him? So when he is performing, he's not sharp. He's not, like he says, I need to drink. He's not drinking when we see him performing some of those times. And actually, those first few times we see him perform, like the flea routine, I don't know if that was an actual performance. It felt like a dream to me.
It was a dream.
It was a prelude to the later performance, right? As opposed to a performance he'd previously put on.
I'd say it was a dream because he kept speaking about that he's had dreams of some skits that he wants to do, and then he had a dream of her in the dream and how he involved her. Yeah. So I see all those segments as actual dreams, and that was his first coming up with the idea for the flea circus. That's what I saw it as.
Well, yeah, because he has that moment where he right before he wakes up, he looks and there's nobody in the audience, and then he wakes up. So it was I took it as a nightmare.
That is wonderful, that bit. So that scene worked for me, even though I didn't really find the flea stuff all that funny. Elements of it I did, but that moment where he runs back on stage for the encore and the laughing stops, his face drops before the laughing stops, and then you see those seats. I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like this with Chaplin before. I've never seen it. And that's him stopping and taking a look at himself, where he is at that point. The thing you're saying, Julio, is something Paul has said a lot before about older films as well, and that's stuff to do with the pacing and the stylized way of acting and stuff like that. So you know that I've started this 1001 movie journey where I'm going from chronologically from the 1900s through to modern day, and it's going to take me the next couple of decades to do it. But I'm about 100 deep, and I've pushed through the silent era, and I'm in sort of like the mid 40s at the moment. And the thing that I found is that all the silent stuff, when you're in the midst of the silent stuff, is working really well. So Chaplin stuff in the midst of it is working really well. Buster Keaton works really well alongside him, because Buster Keaton was far superior as like a stunt man, but it was never as funny as Chaplin. Chaplin was a lot funnier. And then you had, I think it's Henry Lloyd or George Lloyd, who was like this US-based silent comedian. He came along and started doing some stuff, and it was all kind of working. Then the advent of sound came along and just changed the game cinematically. So as I'm following this along, I'm seeing how the stories are changing. The idea of what entertainment is changing. And by the time you come around and you're looking at the dramas of the mid-40s, you're already judging what you've seen before and thinking, well, that was great then, but it doesn't make sense now. But it was great then. That's why I think what Chaplin does in this, the drama and the comedy go well in a tragic kind of way, because I think when he's doing drama, he's showing that he's literally Calvero saying, we've got to progress, we've got to move forward. It still has the optimism of Chaplin, but I think intentionally all the humour is there in a sort of melancholy way. I feel like you're meant to feel sad whenever you see these humorous moments. I felt sad. You know, when he does, when the funniest bit in the film, because it showed the real magic of Chaplin, is when he's talking to Terry over breakfast, I think, and he says, "Oh, have you ever seen a rose bush or a Japanese tree or a pansy?" And he's just contorting himself. He's like, "This is silent Chaplin. This is him. All these little expressions is wonderful," and it makes me sad, because like you don't exist anymore. That comedy doesn't exist. People aren't paying to see that anymore. And I think definitely he is far too indulgent with the dialogue in those early stages. There's too much repetition, but it all comes from a really good place, I think, and a very progressive for the time attitude to a media that no one understood. No one really knew what cinema was capable of back then. Okay, it exploded onto the scene, but no one would know where it would lead to. And even then, Chaplin was aware, I've had my time, so let me do drama, let me do comedy, and then I'll step aside. And he should have stepped aside. I know he acted for decades afterwards, but this is really his goodbye, man. This is his goodbye.
Coming off the back of you saying about that segment, it's really interesting actually to say that both Adam and Julio found that scene funny with the flea circus, and I, on the same wavelength as you, Ben, that scene for me was like, oh, it's going on a bit long, it's not too funny. It was a little bit funny, but it's going on a bit too long. And then showing him looking at the audience with an empty audience, I was like, yes, I like
that's
it.
what I liked.
I like it now.
Yeah.
Because that is why it worked for me, showing that.
I think maybe, I mean, no, I know it's funny, and I think what made it funnier, maybe react to it, was that I was relieved that I found it funny, because the first time you see it, the first time you see Chaplin, he's drunk, and he's doing that. He spends the first 10-15 minutes of the movie just acting drunk, And that wasn't working for me. I'm like, this works in a silent movie, but his drunk acting in a movie with sound that's a little more realistic, that didn't do it. And I was terrified that this was going to be him the entire movie. I'm like, oh, he's a drunk, and this is just going to be 2 hours and 20 minutes of Chaplin acting like this, and I'm just going to hate it. So when the movie he went to bed and we went to a place that was a lot more like the Chaplin I was expecting, on top of me finding it funny, I think that there was just this wave of relief of like, oh no, he still got it, and there's still this element is going to come into play later. Now, you just reminded me, Ben, another big problem I had with the movie. And again, this is just me struggling with giving the movie its due, as in like this was made in, way back then. But as much as I appreciate and really I even commend, like the positive message of Chaplin of like, you need to get up and move through adversity and all that stuff. I also had this in the back of my head. I'm like, dude, yeah, from the year 2021, to me, she is depressed. You can't just tell her, hey, get over it and go back to dancing.
That's very, very true. Yeah.
And so that really ate at me through that first section because, it was just one of those things that can't help it, man. It's dated. It's not its fault.
Yeah, there was a lot
fault.
of moments like that. But you have to kind of push them aside a little bit.
Yes, I mean, but it's part of the experience, right? How much, you have to understand it, but at the same time, you have to. It goes back to, I don't have that problem with movies that he's made that he made even earlier, right?
True.
Like the criticisms of capitalism in modern times, for example, like those they work wonderfully now as they did back then. So to see him kind of like accidentally miss the mark here also stung in just kind of bother me.
But was there I get that, and you're right, with the 21st century lens, view it differently. But what was the discourse around that sort of thing? Like, we were at a time where if someone's tries to take their own life, they go to jail, or at least in London they do. I didn't know, but if at that time, what was the discourse around people who were clearly depressed? Was that a thing? Was it accepted that people could have mental illness, and a mental illness would be depression back then?
I imagine he is probably representing the views of the era, right? Like if you saw somebody that was acting the way that Terry was, you were like, okay, well, you're sad, but it gets better. It was just, again, it's not the movie's fault, but I can't deny that it affected my experience of it.
Are you saying, Julio, that you can't slap a woman and throw her on the stage to get her over depression?
To get a good performance out of her?
Dude, that was just...
That was so unexpected. I rewound that because I was like, that was a punch. That was not a slap.
Do you know what the weirdest part about that is he came up before and he put his hand on her shoulder, and straight away you were like, this is just a weird scene.
But it was like, if love's not working, then I'll throw a little wall your way. He got a good performance out of her. I don't know what he's saying with that.
And then that's never acknowledged again, right? It's like they never even. He doesn't.
In fact, doesn't she rush to thank him afterwards after the great performance? She gives him a big hug, like, thank you for that abuse.
The thing is, I saw her whole predicament as that she had a massive fear of performing on stage in front of everyone, and that was him going, just get on there. It's like you need a push to get over that fear.
So can you explain something to me? Because I had this question from the off. Not that they necessarily had to give an answer, but I wasn't sure why she attempted to commit suicide. And then when the doctor tells Chaplin, oh, it's just hysteria, she's making it up, she's not paralysed at all. And then Chaplin tries to entice a story out of her. She spins this yarn about her sister who was walking the streets and stuff, and he was like, oh, well, there you are, you feel guilty about it. I was like, what have I missed? I don't understand what's happened here. So why did she try and kill herself, and what was the backstory that leads to her depression?
So I saw her wanted to kill herself because she was utterly petrified of becoming famous and the audience and her almost failing on the stage, and so it almost, oh my god, I'm not going to act, oh my god, I can't dance, oh now I can't even walk, kind of thing. It's just like the spiral of fear, basically. That's how I saw it, fear rather than depression.
Well, I'd say that's more of cycle of depression, isn't it? You start doubting yourself in every way.
Yeah.
Well,
I
they
guess
throw
so, yeah.
they throw a little bit of that. This doesn't sound like an accurate psychological analysis, but doesn't he draw a comparison or like a? Because I think she says that her sister paid for her dancing classes, for Terry's dancing classes, by basically being a prostitute. And when Terry found out, that created a sense of guilt that prevented her from eventually performing.
Right.
I don't think that holds water in the real world as we know it now, but I guess back then they're like, that tracks, that makes sense.
Yes. If in a time when women would faint at the drop of a hat over anything, then why wouldn't they go paralyzed when they find out their sisters work in the streets?
As I was hearing Paul defending Chaplin's slap to Terry, I thought back to your episode about Whiplash, our Whiplash conversations on Twitter and all that stuff about just like tough love from from people that are training you, trying to push you harder. And I guess that's the evolution of what Chaplin does here in a way, that just you just need to push through and then you'll be great. And then she is great by the end of the movie. I mean, that's the last thing you see. She's just dancing. She's replaced him as the entertainer.
I mean, it is problematic when you look at it that way, but I guess, and I know that this is flawed. It's a flawed film for sure for reasons like that. But I like the sentiment from Chaplin, who already off camera by that point was a very problematic character for other reasons. Within this film, where he could have like expressed a little bitterness at his situation, like he'd been with multiple women. The young girls that he was involved with in his personal life were all over the media. His previous films have been commercial failures. He could have been bitter with this film. He could have been angry, but he was like the abuse and the come on, buck up, do the right thing of this young girl was essentially him saying to the next generations, come on, it's your turn, get out there, do it. If you take the literal representation of the woman away, it's about, come on, I'm done, do you now, let's see what you got. I had my time. Now it's your time. Stop staring down at your shoes. You bring something to the table. My God, didn't we? And don't we just keep?
I about halfway through the movie, maybe again because I had Buster Keaton in my head and I was trying to figure out where he was in the movie.
Yeah, me too. I was like, is this going to be him now?
Yeah,
that's what I did.
I was afraid that he was the clown in the.
I so wanted him to be. That's what I wanted. And when that guy turned up, I was like, "You're not Buster." That would have been the perfect, but then not in the place of the narrative. It wouldn't have worked. But that's who I thought it was going to be.
That is interesting though, because I was doing the exact same thing. I knew that Buster Keaton was in the film, and by the time I got to the end of the film, that was out of my mind.
You've forgotten there.
And I didn't even realise that was Buster Keaton. So they were in that scene.
Face.
So they were in that scene, and I had no idea that this needs to be good now because it's two really amazing comedians in one scene. So I think it kind of took it away from it, and I was just enjoying it for what it was. So I think that helped in that situation.
I at some point wondered if it was just that Chaplin was also the character, even though we're seeing as is Chaplin playing an old Chaplin character. I wonder if he was making more of a commentary on someone like Buster Keaton, who wasn't as successful as Chaplin was anymore, right? Now, after watching the movie, I read that Monsieur Verdoux was a bomb, and that was his first failure. So I guess in a way that also has to have affected Limelight and the melancholy and the reflection that comes with it. But I think that as I was watching it, I read it more as in this is not entirely about him, but also about just people that were as successful as him and they're not anymore. And Calvero is not just a stand-in for Charles Chaplin, he's a stand-in for Buster Keaton and who knows how many other silent stars that just aged out of the industry. So that gave it also a little bit of extra punch.
The interesting thing that I read about that scene is that a lot of people said that Chaplin essentially edited out all of Keaton's funniest stuff, which is why Keaton sort of reacts more than acts at all. But I think it was either Keaton's daughter or his wife said on the record that he loved being in the film. There was nothing edited out, and for the purposes of the film, of course, Chaplin was going to be in the limelight. It was about him. It was his show. It wasn't, okay, and now we're going to have this 50-50 double act scene here. It was going to be about him. And I think, like I said before, with Buster Keaton is funny because of the incredible sets and stunts of things that happen around him, whereas Chaplin is funny as the Tramp is a fucking funny character. He's a character you take into your heart. He makes you love him. He makes you laugh with him. Whereas Keaton was always, he was colder to attach to. So the situations around him were what was funny. So when the two of them are on a stage with a violin and a piano, it's going to be the Chaplin show. And it just had to be Keaton reacting to things.
Yeah, I can totally see if you went into that scene thinking, this is Buster Keaton now, I would as well think, oh, he kind of just fade into the background in that scene. It was all Chaplin with the legs, and it was that. I mean, I did love the Buster Keaton with the papers. I thought it was really funny, but he just
because you like that dumb humour. That's why
I love that dumb humour.
You love the dumb humour.
But yeah,
you and
I
Keaton
get that.
should get a room somewhere. Julio, I got to ask you: do you know who Widow Twankey is?
No.
That's a very British reference. You know, Paul. You know, Adam.
I
Widow
don't.
Twankey.
I know the
what?
phase, but I don't really know what it means.
Is that from pantomime?
Yes, pantomime. This is a very British reference. When that guy in the bar says to Calvero, "I last saw you playing Widow Twankey at the Middlesex." I thought, Julio won't get that reference. Everyone else will. Widow Twankey is a very popular pantomime character over here in the UK, and the fact that he played Widow Twankey would show how far he's fallen, because Widow Twankey is like pantomime performance for stars who were once big and now they're terrible.
Like Z-list.
Yeah, proper Z-list stuff.
Talking about the ending,
Yes.
about his death, right? I didn't actually think he was going to die. I thought it was going to be some kind of twisted joke that he fell into the drum
That's the darkest chapter.
and then lost the use of his legs. That's what I thought it was going to be. I was like, what, is he paralysed now? Because he was like, oh, my spine, or something like that. And I was like...
And then she goes over. She's like, just back up, get over it.
Slap!
Yes, bang. Do you want kippers for breakfast? You know that bit, this is just another Keaton thing, that final scene, because Keaton's standing behind Chaplin as the camera's sort of pulling away and you see Terry dance. Apparently Keaton was essentially directing Chaplin at that moment as the camera was pulling back, because obviously Chaplin was directing Keaton for the rest of this film, and people have said that they could hear Keaton mumbling to Charlie things like, that's it, just hold still there, one more second, you got it, just keep it there, perfect, we're done. The last thing he said was, we're done. Almost as if, for that final shot of the film, you and me, Chaplin and Keaton, it's over.
And then he
Game
just turns
is
around
over.
and walks out.
I really like that he was in that shot. That final shot
Yeah.
is amazing. I love it.
It
as
is.
the camera's pulling back, and I was just happy to see Keaton. Not even he's like all the way far in the back. You can still recognize him, but it just felt so appropriate that he was part of that ending, even though he was such a minor character.
Doesn't Bellucci in that video say, for him anyway, that final scene when they pull the sheet up over Chaplin, the sheet is the screen, the cinema screen, the theatre curtain, like dropping over him. That's the end. Done. The Chaplin character gone. It's very sad. Very sad. I don't like to think about this. I don't like to think about that too much. That's kind of what I like about Limelight.
How many films did he do afterwards?
As the Tramp, none. He went on to do a bunch of films afterwards, so I haven't seen any of them. Have you, Julio?
No. This
Weren't
is
any
the
of them
oldest.
regarded anything?
I don't think so.
No, so I did like a quick look through his filmography on IMDb after, and I think he directed 2 more movies after this, and then there was a collection of 3 shorts that he put together as a feature. So he did his last movie is with Brando.
That's right, and Brando said he was an absolute tyrant.
Which for Marlon Brando to say that, I
Brando
mean
to
everybody
say
knows Brando's reputation. So I don't know. And then he did something else after, like I think like 5 years after Limelight, and then that collection of shorts, which I think it was just more like a remastering of all shorts, and then his movie with Brando. But then he acted on a whole bunch of things in addition to that. But it wasn't, like Ben said, that wasn't it for the character of the tramp or anything that was even inspired by the tramp.
Yeah.
Has anyone seen a film with Chaplin actually speaking in it?
The Great
Apart from
Dictator.
The Great Dictator.
Oh, does he? Oh, okay, I didn't know that. I haven't seen it.
He does a speech in it, which is it's very great. It's a brilliant speech. I'm
Okay.
sure you can find it on YouTube, but you should probably watch the whole film, Paul. It's very good.
Yeah, I do. I do want to see that.
Yeah.
Is the Great Dictator the one with the dance scene at the end?
That's
It's
modern
when
times.
he's Hitler.
Which one's
Great
that one,
Dictator,
sorry?
he's Hitler.
What's the one with the dance scene at the end?
Yeah, Modern Times.
That's the one.
Modern Times is a wonderful. Modern Times has so many great moments, but my absolute favourite moment in it is when he is in prison and he's sitting next to an inmate, and the inmate next to him has had cocaine smuggled in, and the warden's about to come in the room, so the inmate puts the cocaine into the salt shaker in front of Chaplin. Chaplin throws all this cocaine over his dinner, and it's like, this is 1930s. The comedy is cocaine flying all over the room. Chaplin's snorting it up while he's eating, and his reaction on it, it's gold. It is gold. But everything in Modern Times is gold. It's out of all those films that I've seen on that 1001 movie list, I think it's like my third favourite, about 110, 120 in. It's definitely his best.
I need to watch that.
I want to take things to a slightly, not darker, but more controversial area here, right? Okay, so for all those Chaplin films that we love, the common theme in them, when he's the tramp, generally speaking, is young women that he saves, right? Or he always saves them typically from whatever situation they're in, whether it's poverty or, I think in City Lights, he saves a young woman from suicide as well, I think. On the dock.
That's the one where she's blind, right? But I don't remember if she
Yes.
was suicidal or not. But he's definitely
Okay, maybe not. But
making her
there's
life
always
better.
some sort of vulnerability to the women that he saves in the films, and they kind of latch onto him as a protector. They don't necessarily always end up in a romantic relationship, but for the most part, he leads them and guides them along the way. So, first of all, I liked the inversion in this film where actually, yes, it begins with that same old trope, and I was like, here we go again. But then halfway through, it spins. She's, thanks to him, yes, a little more successful, but actually he's the one who's now on the steady decline, and she's the one who gets him to perform at the variety performance, and she reinvigorates some life in him. So I liked that was inverted, but I wondered how much of that was in response to what was going on with him in his personal life at the time, where he had been so criticized for going with young woman to young woman. Not that there's anything wrong with it if it's legal, but when you get your co-star from The Kid, Paul, which you've seen, his co-star in The Kid, who was 12 at the time, he waited 4 years until she was 16 and got in a relationship and had a child with her. And all this was happening backdrop before this film happened. So I wonder, cynically, how much he tried to like kind of expunge his guilt through Limelight by showing himself as this character who, yes, this young girl likes me, but like the anti-Woody Allen, like Woody Allen's like, let me lean into it, let me just have every elderly character in my film go with young girls. For Chaplin, he was like, let me show this older man does not want any romantic relationship with this younger person. Or if we're not going to look at it cynically, maybe it is him coming to terms with the fact that he was an older man, and actually that's not the role that I should have for these people anymore.
I appreciated that they went that way, because as soon as she said, I love you, I want to marry you, whatever, I was like, come on now, don't go down this route, down this route. And I was so happy that he was like, no, don't be stupid, I'm an old man, why do you want to be with me? I appreciated that so much they didn't go down that route.
Yeah.
And I love the way that I almost felt like he was trying to set her on a path to be with I can't remember his name now,
What's his name?
The piano player.
The piano player.
Who is Chaplin's son in real life?
Yeah, Chaplin's son. Is it Chaplin's son?
Yeah.
I know it's a family member.
He had his kids all over this film.
Yeah.
It's a family affair.
From so many different women. Young and old. But I felt like he was setting her on that path, but it never actually explicitly said it. Because he was like, he went up to the restaurant and was like, oh, go into this restaurant, I'm not going to go into the restaurant. And then it so happened that he was standing there in the restaurant with her.
Yeah.
But I appreciated that they didn't go down that route. Yes, and it could be very well be. Yes, he's trying to say, look, I can do a film where I'm an old man and don't have to be with a young woman.
I just wonder how much of it was him accepting that, or how much of it was him reacting to a backlash at the time.
Yes, yeah.
And going, okay, my character has to keep her away with a 10-foot pole kind of thing.
Yeah.
Either way, I was happy.
I think that just given the movie's themes of just aging and kind of fading away out of the spotlight and the young replacing the old, it just from that point of view, it makes sense that it wouldn't be about a romance, or it would be about a doom romance and about, you know, just this girl that falls in love with somebody who saved her life, but that, you know, in a way, I mean, it kind of toes the line with being condescending, but again, it goes back to just like the old times, like where he knows better than she does, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what bothered me, and I was glad that in a way they showed her being somewhat aware of, because she has a conversation with the guy with the piano player, and they kind of acknowledge, he does it openly, and she halfway acknowledges that she is attracted to him and that she cares for him, but that she has much more complicated feelings towards Calvero, and you know, she says it's not pity, it's just, you know, love, but a very, you know, specific kind of love. So I'm glad that they gave her that moment, because before then that was my other fear. I was like, okay, it's not gonna be this thing where they're like a functional couple, but it's going to be this thing where like, well, the old man knows better than
and
the
she's
young
just
woman.
very one note.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
But I think that it kind of navigated that because that love triangle it had more shades of gray than, you know, you normally would expect. So that was good.
But then the other thing with that love triangle, though, which ties into my comments before, is even though Chaplin keeps her at an arm's length, the psychology of him having his son be the one who gets with her in the film.
Oh my God.
It's like, keep it in the family, you know?
If I can't have it, my son can.
Get her one from Dad.
Oh, Adam. Neville.
There you go.
That's his name. Neville.
Neville,
Very
yes.
British name. Very British name.
Was he British in it? He sounded like he had an American accent.
Yeah, he was American. Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Sometimes I find it very hard to distinguish, because there's this
The
dialect
posh.
in America, which I can't remember what they call it, but it's Frasier and Niles dialect in Frasier, where it's like this anglicized American, where it becomes hard to determine whether or not they're American or not. You get it all the time with these old films, because everyone talks like they've got plums in their mouth, so it's impossible to work out who's American and who's English. Julio, you know, you said this melodramatic side to the film, like, kind of turned you off when you were watching it based on what you were used to. Did you not, well, not to put words in your mouth, that's my opinion, how did you think he performed as a dramatic actor, Chaplin?
I think that, okay, for one, in the context of the time that the movie was made, I think he was fine. I mean, I think that if you saw it today, like if it was him like acting against, I don't know, Michael Fassbender today, like in a movie, you'd be like, he's hamming it up a little bit.
Charlie Chaplin in Shame.
God, please.
Penis out.
But also, I think that he definitely seemed, you can tell, right, that he has so many more years of experience than his co-star, the actress playing Terry. I think that it's not that she's bad, but she, especially like the big dramatic moments, like the transition from her being, you know, speaking to you normally and then her breaking down and crying was always so jarring. And I would just do that thing, you know, it's like, all right, well, that was how it was back then, you know, this was considered an acceptable performance for that kind of emotion. But that I'm a lot more forgiving, you know, so it's a lot easier for me to just look past that, but it was not, you know, pleasant, I guess, to look at.
Paul, did you like when you're saying when she suddenly breaks into these really melodramatic moments when she cries for a second and she has 10 different water droplets all over her cheeks? There's a show, Julio, which I don't know if you've seen. It's a British show. It's called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, and it is even if you
So
haven't
good.
seen it, it is absolutely brilliant because it's a behind-the-scenes look at this fake 80s horror television show with like fake interviews with the creators and the writers and everything. But in it reminded me of Garth Marenghi because whenever they shout at the female doctor, suddenly all these water droplets are on her face. But in this, they do it intentionally. Oh man.
It was very much like that. I especially noticed it when he left at the end, and she runs down the stairs. Where's Calvero? Where is she? He's like, he's left me. It's like,
But that was the style
that
at the
was
time.
it. Was the style?
Yeah, but you
It's
know,
a cliche.
It's. I'm glad that we moved away from it, but I also, I guess at the time when you were watching this, that must have been incredibly powerful. I mean, look, even
Yeah.
with all that, the moment where she realizes that she can walk, like that worked for me. I don't know if it's because I think that I knew that was gonna happen, right? Like because I think that most people in the audience realize it before she does. Like she stands up, and you're like, oh, she's not wobbling anymore, and she's just giving him the speech, and then suddenly she's like, oh, I can walk. She just keeps going, and I didn't mind that the performance was so over the top because I felt that for one, like the moment was, it merited it. It was good. That might have been like the one moment where I was just fully in sync with her. But I don't know if that worked for you guys.
What
Do you
was
know
the
why
re-
it
What was the
didn't?
reason?
She
was just going about her day, and all of a sudden it was like, oh shit.
No,
Well,
but
he's
didn't
depressed.
Calvero do something? Yes,
Yeah.
it was something to do with him, wasn't it? That she was like,
because he got
to explain
fired.
something.
They terminated his
Yes,
contract,
yeah.
and he's telling her that, and he's just like, it's
Yeah.
over.
yeah.
Do you know why it didn't work for me, Julio?
Was
Because-
it the dissolve?
No. It was because all I could think of was the final shot in, spoilers alert, Doctor Strangelove, where Doctor Strangelove stands up from his
yeah.
wheelchair. Mein Führer, I can walk. That's all I could think immediately. It's like you two can coexist in the same universe.
Can I forgot about that.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys have seen, I think Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor.
Oh yeah.
Another cinematic masterpiece, but there's a moment halfway through the movie, I think it's after the attack and America's recovering and FDR is the president and FDR is in his wheelchair with his cabinet and he's saying something about I guess he's giving some controversial orders and the cabinet is talking back to him and the way that he shuts them up is he gets up from his wheelchair and he just like, and then everybody's like, oh my god, that's the president of the United States. Yes, we'll do whatever you're saying.
Very Michael Bay.
Exactly. That is Michael Bay to a T, is it not?
Yeah. But you know what? Chaplin did it first. We just
Yes.
happened to see it later.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
There's a few lines that I wrote down because I thought these are so good they stand. You got them too?
I was about to say there's some great lines in this film, and I was about to tell you some.
Go on,
I
you
love-
go first. You go
my
first.
my
with some
favourite
great
was where
lines.
he's it's actually Buster Keaton and Chaplin, and it says, I thought you hated the theatre. And he goes, I also hate the sight of blood, but it's in my veins. I thought that was great.
That's good. That is good. Yes.
Great line.
Best line. Something about working the streets I like. It's the tramp in me, I suppose. Come on, tattoo
Yep.
that on me.
Yeah.
We're all amateurs. We don't live long enough to be anything else. Come on. I would give anyone much money to put that in a script nowadays. Wonderful. This and this less about the line, more about the delivery. And this is why I was asking you about what you thought about Chaplin as a dramatic actor, because I actually, very indulgent as we said, but I liked his performance. And it was when he said, and the only thing that's as inevitable as death is life. Life. And the way he says it is like, oh, he's vibrant. You believe his passion for life. After all of it, but it comes with the context of him dismissing the fact that she's clearly going through some shit.
There was also
and
a
there's-
line where,
go on.
do you know when he met the people in the bar and he's walking around with his hat and he's asking for the money and they ask him, what are you doing now? And he goes, I'm performing. And he goes, but you're performing on the streets. And he goes, well, the world's a theatre. It's the only honest one there is. I thought that was quite a nice line.
Very good.
Very good.
Another line which I liked, which more of a joke, but she's just woken up and he's talking to her and he's like, can the sun think? Is it conscious? No, but you are. And then he looks over, she's asleep. Sorry, my mistake. Good delivery.
And something, I'm not going to get into it because I was trying to think, how can I make a really clever connection to Bo Burnham's latest special? But I'm not even going to go down that route. But basically, the bit where Chaplin is saying, it's not the individuals that he hates, but it's the crowd as a collective, the monster that the crowd becomes when he's faced up against them. He likes the individuals, but it's the crowd. And I thought, all that stuff with Bo Burnham recently, that's probably quite relevant considering everything that he said in his special.
I still haven't seen it, but I have it on my Netflix list.
Highly recommend. I mean, there was quite a few parallels between what Calvero's going through in this, bizarrely, and what Burnham's channeling in some of his songs, to be honest.
I'd say so.
Does he slap anyone on his special?
He's on his own.
He just beats himself up a lot. Anyway, do we have any closing comments on this film, do we think?
The love and enthusiasm from the three of you have made me want to rewatch it much sooner than I expected I would. Because when I was done, I was like, all right, well, I can check it off the list, and I'm not gonna watch it again until I have to. Like, at some point, I know I'm gonna feel the need to just like give it another chance, but I didn't think that would happen for a good while. But I really want to like just sit back and watch it again, because you know, a rewatch on its own is always different, but then also kind of like see it with the film buster's eyes. It just like you know, I don't have any quotes pulled like all three of you guys did. So you know, there's something obviously that was working for the three of you, like in a much more. And I remember all those lines. They just I never felt the need to like jot them down. You know, they didn't hit me as hard, but maybe they would, or at least I would notice them more strongly the second time around. So it's probably better than my 5, you know, or it will be better for me than my 5. But right now, you know, if I have to be honest about how I felt watching it, how I felt at the end of it, you know, it's a 5.
Yeah.
And you're not wrong, because it is a 5 for you, because everyone brings their own baggage to the film. Like, the reason I'm giving it an 8 is because there's some personal stuff as well mixed in there. Like, I enjoyed the film technically for what it is. I enjoyed his performance. I enjoyed the story and the themes, but if there aren't some personal things that I can connect it to going on for me as well, then it wouldn't be as high. But there were, and funnily enough, some of the personal stuff is the personal stuff that you've got, Julio, except you went the other way with it. It was sadder for you, a sadder take for you because of it.
That's what I love half the time whenever we discuss these films, and especially when I don't like something as much as you guys, and then it kind of puts this film on a pedestal because we've had this great discussion about it, and it almost, I see it in a better light because it's like, oh, they like that film, and it makes you want to watch it again.
Getting FOMO.
Yeah.
If someone's got love for it, you go, well, then there's something. There's obviously stuff there, even if I didn't see it, like, you know, burn off the reading. I don't see it, but it does it for you a lot, and I like it because it does it for you a lot.
What a beautiful film that is.
Even listening to you now, Julio, I'm still surprised about how low you gave this film. It's so weird to listen to you speak, because when one of us gives it a 5, we struggle to find positives from the film and be able to talk about it in a positive way, but you've given it a 5 and probably talked about it in probably the most positive way out of all of us.
I don't know about that, but yeah. I mean, I think because I've seen so many movies that are so much worse. I mean, you know, I guess a 5 sounds in the face, especially compared against 3 8s. It just sounds so negative. But I've given so many like 3s, 4s, 2s, and 1s.
Yeah,
you know, I'm like, this is still so much better. I mean, it's still good. It's just, I'm also, part of me has to be grading on the Chaplin curve. You know, like Modern Times is a 10, City Lights is a 9, Gold Rush, I think I have it like maybe it's a 7. But you know, it's all like
Gold Rush
really
is a 7. Yeah.
So,
what's your take on Buster Keaton? You enjoy him or not?
I've only seen one Buster Keaton movie, like in full.
Oh, which one?
The one where he's on a boat. He works at a boat.
Oh, Steamboat Willie.
Steamboat Willie.
Yeah, Steamboat Willie. I didn't really like it that much.
No, that's not his great one.
Is that Mickey Mouse? Steamboat Willie?
Yeah, that Mickey Mouse spoofed Keaton with that Steamboat Willie thing, but it's Steamboat something. Sherlock Jr. is the big recommendation for Keaton. Sherlock Jr. is where it was like must be like he nearly killed himself so many times trying to create these films.
Yeah, I do plan to eventually catch up on just his filmography. Just for I feel just with what little I know of Keaton and as much as I know about Chaplin, I always said that I'm more of I lean towards Chaplin's approach to comedy, where
yeah, I agree.
You know, Keaton has the better stunts, but Chaplin has more heart, and that's why I've kept watching more Chaplin instead of pursuing more Keaton. Not that they're mutually exclusive, but you know, I've also found it easier to find Chaplin stuff in.
Most of it's on YouTube, aren't they?
I've got, funnily enough, some of the most expensive DVDs that I own of Chaplin, because I was spending, back in the days when DVDs cost 20 quid. That's how much I used to pay for DVDs. Almost 20 years ago. That's crazy, right? Who would pay £20 for a DVD now? Not even a Blu-ray.
You would spend £20 on a Blu-ray.
I'd pay £20 to get rid of a DVD now so that I could buy a Blu-ray.
Didn't you spend almost 20 quid on Velocipasta?
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Crazed.
Supporting independent cinema, Ben.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, everyone, let's move on to the next segment, which is us reading out some Letterboxd reviews. We have 3 reviews here, each from a very different rating for diversity. Just see what they have to say. Do you want to do the first one, Ben?
Oh, yes, and I'm glad that I'm doing this first one because I've just seen the middle comments. We have a 4 out of 10 review here from Alex Mann, and they say, the more and more I think of this movie, the more I dislike it. This film is the idealised fantasy of an old lech who preys on young women. Funny how both Chaplin and Allen depict their young female ingenues as the initiators to avoid blame. From a modern eye, it's all just too obvious, and even putting all that creepiness aside, the comedy falls flat, it's sickly saccharine and unevenly paced. I love seeing Buster Keaton, though. He cracks me up and the music was wonderful. This was a Buster Keaton fanboy who wanted to take pot shots at Chaplin. That's 100%. You could dig into the dirty laundry of Keaton if you wanted, I'm sure.
Very fitting that you actually brought this up, though, in the episode. I didn't even tell you this comment was going to come up.
I know. I mean, we've spoken about it previously. Like, you know, when do you separate the performance from the actor? Can you do it? How do you do it? What's the line?
Yeah, definitely.
I can't remember what the line is.
I think I want to say that you guys arrived to the same spot that Alex and I did whenever we've talked about it, which is like you can't give an absolute answer. It's more of a case by case scenario because the circumstances are so different every time, and the personal connection you have. You know, like there's some actors, filmmakers, or whatever, where it might be easier for me to separate the person from their work because I guess I'm so familiar with their work before the bad stuff came up or the controversial stuff came up that I'm like, I can still do that. And also, I think it has to do with just how that problematic stuff directly affects your life. Like if it's something that if I had a daughter, right, I think that I would feel like differently, maybe more strongly about some of the things, you know, like Louis C.K. was like exposing himself to like women and, you know, like, that stuff is like it's bad, but I remember at the time thinking like, I mean that's bad, but it's not like, you know, he's not Harvey Weinstein. Yeah. But at the same time, it was like, well, if you're a woman who has gone through that, or you are somebody who loves someone who's gone through that, or knows very, you know, is close to somebody who's gone through that, then it's gonna hit you harder, and it's gonna be a lot easier for you to just say, well, nope, I'm done with Louis C.K. I can't like move forward, you know. To me, like I like his work so much that when that happened, I was like, man, that sucks. I'm definitely not gonna like, you know, seek it out, but that doesn't automatically make me write that off, like everything that I enjoyed before. But that's easy for me to do, you know, and I understand why it's not for other people.
Yeah, I guess most of us in that privileged position where we haven't really suffered any of these things, so it's easy for us to say that, rightly or wrongly, but it is true. Like my line with, I always go back to Kevin Spacey as the sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, the watermark. And for me, it's like, if he were to release another film now, which apparently he's going to, I won't put money in his pocket. I won't pay to see that film, but I'm not going to stop watching all of the incredible film. He's an incredible actor. He's also a creep. The two can coexist. The films that he put out beforehand, which are like, communal efforts. These aren't the works of just Spacey and no one else, and just these individuals. They're collective works. So everything that everyone else done is still worth seeing. But anyway, we could go way off topic if we start talking about all of that stuff.
Yes.
That's only review 1.
All right, next we have Evan Adams Evan with a 7 out of 10. And he says, tonally interesting. I can't tell if this intentionally plays with and leans on striking emotional cliches to make a statement about show business and art on purpose. This is so aware of itself in a way that is rare for films made in the 1950s. At the same time, I am not in love with it. But I appreciate Chaplin's ability to contextualize his views about his career without being self-indulgent or narcissistic. I don't know that I agree with that last part.
Yeah.
There's a lot of self-indulgency.
There was a lot of self-indulgence. I don't think it was narcissistic, though.
Yeah.
It was self-indulgent, but I don't think in a nasty way.
Right, the last review we have is a 9 out of 10, and this is from Christina. And she says, this wouldn't be the last film Chaplin directed or appeared in, but Limelight does feel like his official goodbye to cinema and his sincere thanks to the audience that had supported him for decades. Deeply personal and heartrending, but with a silver lining of optimism, and characterises nearly all of his best pictures. And of course, there was a great treat of seeing Chaplin perform with Buster Keaton for the only time in either comedian's career. Apparently that's not true. Almost no dialogue is spoken during their comedy routine, but it doesn't need to be. They're masters at work after all. Yeah, apparently there's a little short they were in before this.
Yeah.
Something.
I wonder if that's more
short.
even-keeled, where you actually get to see them face off with their stunts instead of Buster Keaton being in the background.
Well,
there needs to be a Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin face-off film where they swap faces. And Keaton's got to bring heart to his performances, and Chaplin's got to do stunt work, and both of them are fish out of waters. Oh, it's a big farce. It would be hilarious. We should do it. We should do it. What was that thing that got said in the middle there that I wanted to say?
deeply personal, heartrending. It's an official goodbye.
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing that's beautiful about Chaplin saying goodbye, his last silent film, which is Modern Times, which is a silent film but isn't, but he doesn't speak in it. His last words are smile, which is very nice, which goes hand in hand with who the man appeared to be. Very optimistic, very lovely. It's heartwarming that was his message. And he does say, he says, buck up. That's what he says to her in that final sentence. Buck up, we'll get by, smile. That's the final lines.
He just likes younger women, it's fine.
No, the younger women are the younger generation of film goers. We've established that. They're stand-ins.
Very good. Well, we got some lovely reviews there. Some very
Yes.
diverse reviews, but all correct in their own way.
How about this, Ben? All of you,
Yeah.
really. How does this change if instead of it being a female dancer is a male dancer?
Then it becomes very much, well, it's a man story, man entertainer. This is me passing the torch to you as a man, but your job is to go out there and entertain. That would be worse. Yes. In my opinion.
I don't think I said in the review either that last shot is so beautiful. Like, just the fact that this is the end of this old comedian's life, and this is, unbeknownst to her, doing literally, this is her fame starting this moment, and she's just dancing in front of him. I think that's a beautiful shot. Lovely way to end the film.
Yep.
Mm.
And that was Limelight, I think. Was that Limelight?
It was. I was going to say I didn't like that death as much, but I'm not even going to get into it. It's just I'm not getting into it. Something else should have happened. I wanted him to die, but not like that. That felt the most melodramatic.
You wanted to
Take me out.
go away
Take
like
me
Obi-Wan
out.
Kenobi did, just disappear.
They
Yes.
pull the sheet back up and he's gone. He's not there anymore.
That would have been so good. All right, shall we place this, Paul?
Let's place this film.
Okay, so we took a little time out there. We averaged up our scores. We averaged it at 7.3, and we have a whole bunch of 7.3s. I'm not going to go through them all because we decided it actually placed very, very near the top. So our top 7.3 rated film is The Velocipaster. Below that sits Reanimator, and below that sits Limelight. Right above it, Chapter 2. Just as Chaplin would have intended. There we go. So that's a pretty honourable position on this list, I would say. When you look at some of the things that are above it, it's shocking. Lego Batman, good lord.
Endgame.
Avengers Endgame, yeah. Well, and Infinity War, well. Anyway, that's a respectable position, I would say.
I have a request as part of the 100th episode celebration. I want you guys to go back to something you used to do, and I want to assign each other your characters from Limelight.
Wow. Who's had it? Who's a has-been?
I think Adam is Buster Keaton because he just sits there in the background not talking.
Adam's definitely Buster. So, Paul, you must be Chaplin.
Am I Chaplin?
It's too obvious.
I think I am the optimistic one.
You are.
Out of us, I am.
So
you could be the lady with no legs.
So who's the most cynical? No, because then she gets better, and I'm not better. I think I'm the old lady who runs the house, who just wants everyone out.
You got leaky pipes.
Yeah. What does she say? She says, "Still waters run deep, and they stink too." The lines were great. These are great lines of dialogue.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
We also have one more thing.
Oh,
As
yeah.
a guest on the show, Julio, you get to rate one of the films we've done. And you've already told us what it is. Would you like to tell the listeners what you would like to put a rating to?
Yes. I looked at the list, and I told you guys reminded me. How did that come about? I don't know. You guys brought up Rise of Skywalker
It was
a couple episodes ago. I guess because you were where you were placing
We were positioning
the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that instantly just reminded me how high you had it on your list. And no, I mean, anybody who follows me on Letterboxd can see that I have that at 1.5 stars, which translates as a 3 out of 10 for you guys. And that's where my vote is going.
So with Julio's scoring taken into account, we've recalibrated, we've averaged our score for Rise of the Jedi, which was 7 point something. Who cares? It's not there anymore. What was it? Rise of Skywalker. Apologies.
You're technically
I'm not a
correct.
big Star Wars fan. They all muddle into one. So it gets a 6, which means it's competing alongside Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, Captain Marvel, and Shazam in that order from top to bottom. And it is going to place between Captain Marvel and Shazam, even though I think it's better than all of those films.
I think that's a very good place for it to be. But Crimson Peak's above it, and I'm not sure how I feel.
It's right on the precipice now. It's right on the precipice. Our relegation zone, if it was 2 below, it would be in the relegation zone. No, 3 below. Shazam and Persona are the only films that are keeping it out of that bottom 10 spot now.
So what you're saying is, like, future guests need to give Persona and Crimson Peak.
Yep.
Or they can just go for the Skywalker again.
Yes, Crimson Peak.
You can just...
Dark Skywalker.
Fantastic. I love
Wonderful.
a bit of recalibration of our
I know.
lists.
And thank you very much for your recommendation, Julio. Even though you didn't enjoy it as much, it was wonderful for us to get a breath of fresh air in terms of the films we were covering as well. And I like that we weren't all singing off the same hymn sheet too.
Definitely. Right, everyone, that leads us on nicely to what our patrons want us to watch this week, and this will include Julio's recommendations as well. But let's get the other ones out of the way first. First of all, we have Nerd Revert, and he says, Raya and the Last Dragon is a skip. The colours and textures used will keep your attention. It drags on forever with its world building, and there's a lot of forced humour that falls flat. It's a 2 out of 5, which is a 4 out of 10.
Julio will not agree, considering last week he recommended it.
Yep. And let me just get the other one out. Recently watched Argo for the first time since its release, and wow. Tense from the beginning to end, with no lull in between. Great editing, a fantastic showing from the supporting cast, and Affleck absolutely kills it behind the camera. He definitely should have won Best Director that year. 10 out of 10, and I couldn't disagree more, Nerdrovert.
No, same. I'm sorry.
I really don't remember Argo at all. Was it brought up last week as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Jamie had watched it and recommended it.
Yes, and we gave him a grilling for saying such things.
Yes. So much so that he hasn't made a recommendation this week.
But Raya, I haven't watched it, but Scott actually watched it recently and said it was really good. He gave it a 9 out of 10. So
I enjoy it, but I
think.
do agree about his points of saying the world building took too long, and also there was a lot of forced humour. But I did enjoy the film.
Well,
I mean, it's forced humor. It's Disney humor. I mean,
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
context of a Disney movie for kids, it's just, I guess, kind of like, if it was Pixar, I think that I would
Judge it a bit
react more negatively, against the humor. But it was just like a Disney movie.
fair dues.
And on the Argo front, he should have won an award for Best Director, but not for that. It should have been The Town, which is a banging film.
I need to rewatch that, but I do give it an 8.
I
I do want to watch it again.
I put it on. I don't know if you've seen it. I put it on your Patreon page. Julio,
because Alex brought it up.
Alex talks about it, having seen it for the first time. But my history with that film is so bizarre because I followed that film across the entirety of North America when I went on holiday there, and every place I stopped in Canada, I went to a movie theater to watch it. And I went to huge multiplexes in like Toronto and Vancouver, and then these tiny little indie places in like Alberta, in these snowy towns like Jasper and Banff, with like all the locals. And it was crazy just following this film as I traveled across. It was incredible, but it's a very good film. That's why I kept watching it as well. Anyway, better than Argo is what I'm saying.
Yes.
I agree with that. I don't dislike Argo, but I mean, it never comes to mind.
No.
It's just like I watched it and that was it.
Okay, Katie and Oti say, we recently watched the 1993 film Alive, and in fact they released a podcast on it today, based on the real-life events of the Uruguay rugby team and their families plane crashing in the Andes in the 70s. While the acting leaves a lot to be desired, barring the ever-eternal Ethan Hawke, there are some real themes that speak to hard decisions most of us will never have to face. A cold front, but a warm centre, if you're nasty.
If you're nasty.
If you're nasty.
Has anyone seen it?
It's about them all eating themselves on the mountain after they crash.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, hell, that's a bit deep, isn't it?
Well, it happened.
Has anyone actually seen the film?
No.
No.
Oh.
I know
Well,
of it.
I want to put it on my watch list.
Julio, what about you?
All right, so I watched. Do you guys even know about Shadow in the Cloud? A movie with Chloe Grace Moretz. I think it's from last year.
I've heard. I remember
No.
the name rings a bell, but I don't know anything more about it.
Yeah, she's like, if you saw the poster, she's dressed as a like World War II pilot, and there's like a plane behind her. And I don't want to like. The movie's just so weird, and it's really short. It's not even 90 minutes, and there's a lot of just weird stuff, like over the top stuff that I would hate to spoil for anyone that's going to watch it. So I'm not going to tell it. But if you like Chloe Grace Moretz, like she carries the movie, and it's just basically set in World War II. She's in a she gets into this plane, and they're in the middle of a mission, and then weird shit happens, and it made me laugh. It kept me entertained. I don't know that it's a good movie, but it's a very entertaining movie. So if you go in with those sort of expectations, it might be interesting to watch. Like especially if it's streaming for free somewhere that you have access to.
Is it better or worse than Limelight?
It's shorter than Limelight. I walked away from Limelight with a lot more to think about, but
Okay.
I probably laughed more during Shadow in the Cloud, even though I don't think that it meant for me to laugh as much.
Right.
And then I just watched last night Love and Mercy, the biopic about the Beach Boys singer. What's his name? Brian Wilson.
That's up Adam Street.
Yeah, Adam. Have you not seen this film, Adam?
No, I haven't.
It's from a few years ago. Paul Dano plays him when he's young, and John Cusack plays him when he's older. And the movie just kind of cuts back and forth between him and, as an adult, and him as a younger adult. You kind of, and when John Cusack is playing him, he seems very out of it. And when Paul Dano is playing him, he's just more like in control of his faculties. And you're kind of waiting for the two stories to eventually explain to you how he goes from being like Paul Dano to being like John Cusack. And that was pretty interesting. I'm not big on Beach Boys music, but I kind of recognize it. So there's always that cool when you see like in those biopics when they show you how they made those songs that everybody knows. I always get a kick out of that. And good performances, definitely. It's a good enough biopic. Like if you're into that, and especially if you're a Beach Boys fan or a Brian Wilson fan, I think that it's definitely worth checking out.
I don't know how it comes across in the film, but Brian Wilson's meant to be an enormous asshole.
Really?
Yeah. Does he come across as nice in the film?
He comes across as very troubled. Like that. There's a.
Oh right. Okay.
He has some sort of
framing.
There's a point in the movie where they mentioned that he suffers from I think it's like paranoid schizophrenia or something, and but then later in the movie they say that he was misdiagnosed. So they never tell you what the real diagnosis was. Right. But there's definitely something going on.
Did you like Bohemian Rhapsody then?
I didn't hate it. Like I watched it and I was like, hey, I've seen, you probably heard this like online or from people that didn't like the movie. They're like, why would I watch this movie when I can just watch their Live Aid concert on YouTube?
Yeah.
And my retort was always like, well, because the movie gives you an emotional ride to that Live Aid context that you don't get on YouTube. And when they're doing the Live Aid performance in the movie, they have those close-ups of the people that care for him.
Yes.
That carries the movie for me. And
they just took too many liberties with the truth, and
that's the thing. I was watching it and I had no idea what was made up and what wasn't. So to me, I just took it at face value and it was fine. Okay. I have friends that are very much into Queen and Freddie Mercury, and they're like, yeah, that was just the Disney version of the story.
Lovely.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, thanks to all our wonderful patrons, you included, Julio, for your suggestions. And if you want to become a patron, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com/filmbusters. And after this episode, we will be releasing a patron preview episode, which is actually our monthly roundup from last month, which our patrons already have a little listen to and a view of. You can get the video as well. We're going to put it up on the feed. And yeah, you can take a look at that.
So we're making it available to all you lot who aren't patrons.
Yes.
Add
a little flavour.
Just so you idiots know, the ones who aren't giving us money, give us some money. I don't understand why you wouldn't do it. I'm telling you every week to do it, you idiots.
Maybe it's your aggression. Maybe you're going so aggressive about it.
Not really. We love you all. Thank you for listening. We appreciate whatever we get. We appreciate it. We just ramble along, and if people want to listen, we are delighted.
All the better for it.
Yes. Well, before we hear what we're doing next week, another big thank you to Julio for joining us today.
No, my pleasure. This was a blast. I was glad to be able to take this off my list of movies I needed to watch, and then be able to have a thoughtful conversation with people that had very different views from my own.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. That is what it's all about.
It is.
And another reminder, you can go and check out Julio and his colleague Alex over on the Contrarian podcast. You got to search for Contrarian. We are the Contrarians, right? In order to get you guys up on podcatchers.
Wearethecontrarians.com is our website. If you for podcatchers, you can just search for the Contrarians, and you have the red tomato there with this looking at itself in the mirror.
Something happened. The reason I got confused, I've been listening to your back catalogue, and in the early episodes, when you plug the episode, you say search for. I can't remember what you say. You say something like, you need to search for Contrarian something, because there was another Contrarians podcast. Yes, what was that podcast about?
No idea. From when we started, they were there, but they were not updating their feed, and you couldn't even listen to their episodes. But they were still there, and then I guess after a certain time, Apple will remove your podcast if you're not
right.
doing anything. So we just waited out and then they disappeared. So
Hence your defiant, we are the Contrarians.
Nobody else. But yes, you guys should go check out the Contrarians. They are amazing. We love them. Julio and Alex.
We love them.
Check them out. Your life will be better for it.
Oh, yes, indeed. And now, let's have the drum roll and find out what Paul will subject us to. For the first time since...
Persona.
What film? Persona! My God, this is your first choice in my new house.
That was ages ago. Right, let me add some flavour. Right?
No, salt,
This
babe.
is a film that I believe Julio has watched, if I remember rightly. This is a film by a director we have done once before. This is a film from 2011, and it stars Kirsten Dunst and Alexander Skarsgård and Kiefer Sutherland and Charlotte Gainsbourg.
Oh, Melancholia.
It's Melancholia.
Well, okay. All right.
I could not wait to speak about this film.
Well, I already know
only
what
watched
you
it
feel
recently.
about it.
I only watched it recently, and well,
God, back to
I look
Lars.
forward.
This is the third time we do Lars.
you're checking
it?
off your Von
Yeah.
Trier bingo card. Yeah.
Exactly. House that Jack built
oh yeah,
and Antichrist.
I
So
forgot
now
the house.
Lars and Lynch are the directors we've done
I'm freaking.
joint.
Yeah, we got to
And
hit the
freaking.
trilogy of these directors.
Wow. Okay, I'm looking forward to that. You,
Same.
Julio, have you done an episode on that?
Melancholia? Nope. Alex bought it, and I told him that he needed to watch it, but he hasn't watched it yet.
Right.
And
Okay.
remember, he at some point, once we get back to normal, which hopefully will be soon, he wants to have you guys over for a Dancer in the Dark episode. So you have more Von Trier.
Oh
in the
yes,
future.
my goodness.
I've never seen it, so I'm excited for
I
that.
haven't seen it either. Completionists that we are, we got to go through the entire Von Trier catalogue.
Fantastic. I look
Fantastic.
forward to doing that with you boys.
Yes.
Lovely, lovely Julio. It's been a wonderful time having you on here.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for suggesting Limelight. It was a very good film. Sorry you didn't like it as much as us, but it was good still.
Oh, thank you for having me, guys. A pleasure, as usual.
Until next
No
time.
worries.
Thank
Until
you
next
very
time.
much. Until
We'll
next
see you
time.
later, or we'll
Peace
see you
out.
on the Patreon channel, people. See you
See
later.
you on the Patreon, although not really, not until next week, but there you go.
Deal Buster.